Moving on to the third session of the summit, sponsorship trends in the BFSI sector. And moderating this session is none other than Brian Tellis, co founder and Group Chief Executive Officer, Fountainhead MKTG. Brian has been in the entertainment industry for almost 3 decades now, donning various avatars: show host, performer, voiceover artist, radio jockey, jury member, event business honcho, and consultant, amongst others. He's an influential name in India's event management industry and founding member of the event industry's pinnacle body, EMA. On the panel with him, we have Aditi Puri, Head of Marketing, CMB and GBM, HSBC India, and Ronak Seth, Senior Partner, Head Marketing and Client Experiences, IIFL Wealth Management Limited. Over to you, Brian.
Hey everyone, just want to welcome our entire audience. We're so glad we have you with us today. Very importantly, we have an exceedingly interesting topic that will drive the conversation: sponsorship trends in the BFSI sector. And to augment that, we have two of the finest in the industry to share their thoughts with us. I will introduce them to you, obviously. And I claim chivalry, so I'll start with the lady. We are privileged to have with us Aditi Puri, Head of Marketing, CMB and GBM HSBC India. Now, a little bit about the lady. She has over 17 years of integrated experience across marketing, across communications, advertising. She currently, of course, like I said, heads the marketing at HSBC India for commercial banking and global banking and markets. Importantly, her role at HSBC involves propelling business partnerships, of course, with a focus on integration and insights for strategic development of marketing plans and sales enablement across commercial banking and global banking and markets. That's quite a hefty KRA, and I must add that she delivers it with aplomb. And we will gather a bit of her insights, obviously, as we go along. I must also inform you that prior to HSBC, she has also worked in advertising at Ogilvy and Mather and SSC and B, working with brands, very many brands. And I don't want to give out too much. I'll allow for that information to come at us as we go along. I did mention we have two panelists with us, and we're equally privileged to have with us Ronak Seth, Senior Partner, Head Marketing and Client Experiences at IIFL Wealth Management Limited. Hopefully someday we will qualify Ronak to be one of your clients in wealth management. And we'd like for some insights and inputs from you as to how we can create wealth to be managed by IIFL. For those of you who are tuned in, Ronak has worked with IIFL for over a decade in key leadership roles. One of the differentiating strengths of IIFL Wealth, as you must be aware, is its customer experience. And in the last 3 of his 10 years with the company, his endeavor has always been to create intellectual properties that strengthen client acquisition and engagement, and that is so key. Mentoring startups, I am told, Ronak, is a newfound passion with you. And yes, consulting in the fields of sports tourism, food technology, experiential marketing, and event management, something that's very close to my heart. Of course, all of these things make Ronak and Ronak's thinking strategic and multidimensional. So, like I mentioned earlier, and I've just validated it, we have two exceedingly qualified people with us today to throw light on sponsorship trends in the BFSI sector. Now, I'd like for this to be a conversation more than a question and answer. So, Aditi, I'm going to start. Like I said, chivalry gets the better of me, happily so. I'm going to start with you and request for you to tell us a little bit more about you, a little bit more about the organization and the role you play. objectives of the organization so we can get familiar with your universe.
Thanks, Brian, first of all, for that very flattering introduction. And thank you for having us here. I've been with HSBC for over 13, 14 years now. And as you can imagine, it makes me a hardcore loyalist. So everything I have to say is really great. We're a strong organization. And what many people don't know is we have very, very strong roots in India as well. Over 150 years, we started with the Mercantile Bank. And in fact, we were one of the first banks to give India its ATM. That aside, I think over the years, there's some things we pride ourselves on, which is deep relationships with our clients, the resilience of our business, which kind of spans from retail, which is your credit cards and your loans, to the wholesale part of the business, which I kind of head marketing for, which is your commercial banking, your global banking and markets, institutional banking, and things like that. So the resilience of our business is something we are proud of. And of course, we know the lay of our land. And I'm a strong believer that that mixed with our values of being open, connected, and dependable has been very key to our growth story in India. And I think over the years, we have learned that the deep relationships with our clients always have held us in good stead. And that's why the customer focus, while now we may term it as research and, customer centricity frameworks and all of that has always been there. I think we're just adding more analytics to it. So as an organization, very proud to be part of HSBC and, in India and globally. So that's just a quick overview. I've done plenty of roles. So I in HSBC in my marketing world, I've done from brand, which had, core sponsorships and partnerships as we call it. I moved to comms and I actually moved to learn planning and effectiveness because, like I said, data analytics is coming into a lot of things. So I felt that was a niche to kind of establish. I did that and then I moved into the role where I'm heading marketing for the wholesale bank. So exciting times ahead, exciting times in the past. Look forward to it, Brian.
Even if it kills us in double quick time, huh? It will be exciting.
We hope not. We hope not. We hope we're agile enough to ride the storm.
Yeah. No, we are. We shall overcome. And with
Yes.
tips from you guys, we shall do it in a bit of style, hopefully. Ronak, let's get a little bit of dope on who you are and what your ecosystem's all about. Let's hear it from you.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Billy, for having us on this forum. And thank you, Aditi and Brian, for being, part of this conversation. I feel wealth, as everyone knows, is not as old as HSBC, like Aditi just put it. We're probably 1/10 of that in terms of the number of years we've been existing, about 12 years now. Interestingly, we are the first pure play wealth management company to get listed on stock exchanges. We got listed last year, September 2019, and our inherent belief, and echo sentiments with what just Aditi just said is client relationship, right? That's our entire business. That's how we've grown over the years, and client centricity, modesty, and simplicity are the three mantras that we believe and live by. Having been with IFL Wealth for almost a decade now, I joined them as actually learning and development head and set up that back when we were just about a year or so old, and we were just managing about 3,000 crores of assets under management when I joined in. And over the years, I've transitioned across various roles to now kind of head marketing and client experience, where we're today managing over 160,000 crores of assets for clients across the country and overseas, right? With almost every international financial hub having a presence of IFL Wealth. Brian, what we've really understood in these last 12 years is that nimble-footedness and the ability to deliver on client experience has been paramount for our growth. And our client retention rates are as high as 98%. And our employee retention rates are over 95%, which essentially talks volumes of our commitment to people, whether it's clients, employees, investors, shareholders, etc. Uh, Sponsorships and partnerships have been core to our business, right? And given that we are in a very niche segment, right? We're into wealth management, which essentially deals with only about, the last statistic says there are about 400,000 families in the country uh, who can be qualified as HNIs and ultra HNIs, right? So that's the niche audience that we are dealing with, and with almost about 6,000 families that we work for in the country, there's a huge scope of growth. And sponsorships, partnerships, alliances form an extreme core of our business, because for us, as opposed to building a brand or advertising, it's important from an engagement perspective to ensure that we are able to interact with the audience, be able to acquire and onboard clients through engagement, which is possible through either our own IPs that we've built over the last years, or credible and valuable sponsorships and alliances that we forge, with third party uh, deliverers. So that's the essential ethos and the approach of IFL Wealth in this space.
That's excellent. Thank you, Ronak, for sharing, your ecosystem and your thoughts with us. I'm going to cut to the chase, actually, and just to set a context to our discussion, some early information would be wonderful. Like, you know, we are going through an unfortunate period at the moment. I mean, we all know this. So, a question, Aditi, maybe to you and Ronak. Like I said earlier, if you want to contribute to the answers, please feel free. Uh, but how has this unfortunate happening, the pandemic, affected your brand, affected the marketing spends and brand spends? I mean, give us a perspective of pre and post COVID, so our viewers and listeners know exactly what we're dealing with.
Brian, very interesting question. And to my mind, when you say spends, I don't feel there's been too much of a negative impact on marketing or brand spends. And I'll come to that later, why I say that. What I do think it's impacted the pandemic and its repercussions is our plans and our activities, right? So I think as a marketing community per se, we've had to quickly pivot our activities and plans. For example, like Ronak said, we are very dependent on on-ground events, on-ground activations. And very quickly, we had to rethink all of that and move it online. So, increase our number of webinars and things like that. So I think what it's done is definitely change plans for us. Uh, when I said earlier that I don't think that it's had too much of an impact on spends was twofold, right? I think mature brands realize the value of ongoing engagement with customers. You definitely want to have continued engagement with your customers, especially during tough times, right? We always say through thick and thin, and these are the thick times that we want to be engaged with our customers. Of course, you need to be really mindful of the messaging and what you put out there. And
Sure.
in fact, I think earlier on, around March or April, Cantor globally had also come out with a report which said that consumers, 98% consumers, also wanted to hear from their brands, right? That is one fold. And I think the second thing is marketing has evolved as a growth engine for business, right? I think traditionally, maybe there would have been perceptions that it's a cost and why are you spending the money? But I think, like I've said earlier in my introduction and when we spoke, that with the help of a lot of data, with the help of a lot of analytics, we've been able to prove that marketing is a growth engine for business. And we have the ability to provide that virtually. So I think these are the two main reasons why the negative impact on spends hasn't been too much to my mind.
That's wonderful to hear, Aditi, because it has, as we all know, the pandemic has affected the economy as well,
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
evidently. And it's nice to know that a the intent is still strongly in play to engage with your consumers and potential consumers, and it hasn't had a notable effect,
Yes.
negative effect on your brand spends or your marketing spends. That's great to hear. It's a really positive note to start our discussion. And Ronak, your thoughts on this? And please feel free to be optimistic and endorse what the lady has.
Yes, yes.
I almost, when you said your budgets have not been affected and you said experiential, I almost said yes.
Yes, I did read an article from you earlier where you said because we are a very timeline driven industry, events per se, that the impact could be pretty deep. But it's perhaps, at least in my view, nice to see that it's not been as deep as we would have perhaps expected it earlier on.
You've won yourself another friend. I don't know if that's a qualification or otherwise, Aditi. Ronak, let's hear from you.
So I think agree with Aditi to a certain extent, right? The marketing spends or the budgets haven't been reduced. Of course, they've been marginally put. They've got a marginal impact, but not largely. But what has happened, Brian, also is that as marketeers, we've now been forced to think about better deliverables, ensuring that the ROIs are met, ensuring that the KPIs that we kind of do or achieve or try and achieve for are better delivered, which thus has forced us to kind of pivot ourselves to do more meaningful things, to things which is more virtual in this space, right? And like Aditi, we've like HSBC, we've had to move our entire off ground events into online webinars, right? Thus, suddenly we have seen a lot of traction in knowledge-driven webinars as opposed to more engagement-driven, right? Because on webinars, your engagement is only limited to the speaker that you're listening to, right? There's no two-way interaction available, barring the Q&A window that you have. Thus, that has kind of changed. So, while we've moved on to the webinar platform or the virtual platforms, right? That definitely does not give us brands the opportunity to interact and engage with the audience as much as we get on ground events. And thus, I think that's very important going forward. And my belief is that we won't stay in this state forever. Brands like us will need to get onto the ground to kind of execute. And so including our IPs, which we've never thought of doing through a virtual platform. Today the team is working on driving one of our largest IP on a virtual platform. So we're figuring that out. So yes, we will need to kind of work budgets. Yes, there have been a little cut, but like Adil said, for mature brands, it is essential and important for us to be in contact or in connect with our clients, with our ecosystem, with our potential partners, etc. And thus, that is critical. And then on that space, it's only been it's an improved or an enhanced way of reaching out to them with better deliverables.
Right. Interesting take, Ronak, on especially on the relationship between live events as we know it, or physical events, and the new normal. I hate that adjective, the new normal, but the digital meeting physical, or should I say phygital, which is the new fashionable term to use in our neck of the woods. But I want to know from you all, about the relationship between the two. I have, if I might throw a little bit of an opinion into the mix, that digital in the world of communication has its limitations, obviously, because we really are social animals. We really are experiential animals, not just in the world of business, but in the world in general. And I'd like your opinion on the blend. We believe in the world of experiential, at least, that one can never replace the other. We believe, and feel free to contradict or add value to the statement, that at the moment, of course, digital is the way to go because of circumstantial, happenings. But we believe in the world going forward, at best or at worst, depending on your perspective, virtual will just augment the physical. I just want your take on that, and then I'll come to more specifics. Aditi, you want to give it a go?
Yeah, Brian, I think when you say we are social animals, that's very true. And we've all kind of introverts, extroverts realized that through this lockdown, right? And that's why I'm of the view that when this pandemic ends, we don't know when it will. We don't know when life will return to normal as we knew it, right? Just taking guesses. But I'm quite sure of one thing. When it does all end, our on ground events, your sponsorships, your sports events will see even more enthusiasm for participation than ever before, right? Because this is a time when people have come to deep realizations of how much they want to be part of something. And what are sponsorships? What are on ground events? They, at the end of the day, arenas for like minded people to get together and share a passion. And I think people are going to be craving that at some point of time. So that said, I definitely do think both have a role to play. And I think in this particular time, digital has served its purpose really, really well, right? And when I say that, it's allowed us to reach out to a wider set of people perhaps than we would have with on ground events. We are seeing a lot of asks, like Ronak said, on knowledge, on, inspirational stories, on entertainment, which we can use via digital. When you say digital being used for augmentation of on ground, I think that trend we have been seeing over the past few years. What it might do is spike up even little bit more, right? So over the past few years, if you had on ground events, you'd always use digital to amplify it. But this pandemic has kind of brought to our notice other uses of digital. So originally, while I might just do a social media post, now I've started thinking, can I do something else also around it? Why don't I make a series? Why don't I make a content hub and stuff like that? Why don't I do direct customer outreach via digital and things like that? So I think that relationship will always be in play. Though I do also think that there is scope for virtual events to start speeding up. I do know that that's really not developed a niche right now because it's been fairly new. Maybe in e-gaming it has, but I do see scope for virtual events also going kind of up over the next few years at least.
Interesting, Rona.
Brian, to add to what Aditi just said, I think yes, digital will augment on-ground events. This has been an extremely interesting phase for us, and I think, and how I look at it is certain areas that we marketeers wanted to drive, right? But you usually wouldn't have either a buy-in or would take a long period of time from your management to kind of flag it off and sign it off, has suddenly seen speed,
Yeah.
right? For example, if you wanted to create short AVs, right, talking about your product, or talking about your brand, talking about your ecosystem, suddenly is happening much faster. Alternate outreaches like podcasts, for example, right,
Yeah.
which for a company like ours, which were very heavily on ground event focused company, suddenly elements like podcasts and YouTube videos and webinars and virtual events is suddenly getting a much more buy-in from the ecosystem than it would have been if we were doing on-ground events. Also, what has happened is we are now being forced to think about on-ground into virtual, like I said earlier, right? And that is something which is also enabling our teams to look at the impossible, which they initially had that inertia of saying, so how can we do this online? It's an on-ground event. It's shattering those nuances, those thoughts, and adding more. Opening their horizons actually from a thought perspective, and I think that's extremely important. On-ground events cannot be done away with, is my opinion. We will need to get back to that as soon as probably we get a vaccine in place. I think in a couple of months thereafter, I think we should be back on ground. But this would have opened up a whole new spectrum of uh, engagement with potential clients and audiences.
I don't believe there has ever been a universal prayer for something as strong, as it is now for that vaccine, man. The sooner that happens, the better, to say the very, very, very least. It's an interesting perspective of what drives an activity, a marketing activity. You know, when we say physical on ground, so a classic case to use a cliche, let's take the IPL, So is it a ground event? Is it a television event? Is it a digital event? Is it a bit of each? The ground, propagator can say if there is no ground event, hey, guess what, buddy? There is no digital event. There is no television event. The television, propagator can say, hey, you can have your event on ground like it is at the moment. There's no one sitting in the stadium. If you didn't have television, you could take your event and run it in your bedroom for all we care. So there's always a bit of give and take. There's always a bit of perspective depending on objectivity. I think that kind of drives weightage in one direction or the other. Now, having said that, I'd like each of you to just draw attention to what are the properties or the IPs that you all have. What has been the investment in it, and I don't necessarily mean only commercial investment. I'm talking about investment of expected ROI and the likes, and how has that shifted in the new normal?
Brian, if you don't mind me going first, I think it's a very interesting question and something that came to all our minds at the beginning of the pandemic. Of course, like you would know, it started in Asia Pacific way before it hit India. So it's been something
Right.
that we've been thinking about as a brand. I think any IP or partnership, as we like to call it, there's been a lot of thought gone into it, right? You think about it not only from a return of investment perspective, you also think about it from an engagement perspective, an engagement with customers, with employees, with the community. There's a lot of decision making because typically most of these are very, very long term, right? So I genuinely believe that they're here to stay and they're going to be with us in the long run. That's a very strong belief with that I hold. However, there's certain times like this that may happen again, and we need to think about how we utilize them, Brian. Right? So, do I take my brand ambassadors and instead of using them in a TV ad, do I do a series of webinars with them? Right? So, if I'm investing in a rugby or a golf, do I do a wellness session for my clients? Do I do a wellness session for my employees? I think it's about using it well and not letting go of an IP. It's a strong relationship you've built. Why would you want to let it go? And I'm quite sure there are more than enough competitors eyeing that property, and waiting for you to leave. So I
Absolutely.
am I'm a firm believer that these are there for the long run, and investment has been made keeping in mind that there could be some issues down the way, and you don't let go of them just because of those.
Nice. For the third time, I'm going to say yeah. uh, Ronak, your thoughts on this? Yeah, I mean, because it's a really pertinent um, question, and the answer could be quite critical to very many industries and how they approach the going forward.
Ryan, for IFL Wealth, IPs have been one of the core activities from a marketing and an engagement perspective. Given that we deal with HNI clients, what we've also kind of moved forward and gone ahead and done is also not just to engage with the client himself or herself, but also with their families. And we've created IPs around those so that the relationship is far more better and fuller, right? So we've got IPs which are specifically focused on women folk of the client's household. We've got IPs which are specifically focused on the children. And again, within the children, we are looking at postgrads as well as undergrads. We about 5 days back, we just concluded an internship program over 3 weeks with their undergrad children aged below 19 to 20, around that age. And this IP we'd never done on virtual platform, right? We'd always done it on ground, and we executed it virtual, like proof of the pudding that we got there. Uh, and I think the sponsorships and IPs are again extremely long term. You just don't create an IP for a couple of years, right? You would at least have a minimum of 5 to 10 years of horizon. For us, sponsorships also go the same way. At least about 3 years prior, we stopped doing those 1 year, one event sponsorships. We've started engaging into long-term investments in a property or a platform because we've understood that just being there for one season doesn't help. There's hardly any client recall. You end up just achieving traditional metrics of shaking hands, exchanging cards outside your booth, people looking at your brand, and then everybody's on their own in their own world, right? Consistent approach, consistently being seen there, being there, and participating in curating these sponsored platforms, right? Which includes participating in creative thoughts, participating in executionary thoughts, participating in how to promote and build up the platform. So we've now started taking deeper relationships, building deeper relationships with organizers and platforms, not just to kind of come on board as a partner with money, but also as a partner with knowledge, experience, and curate that as if it was our own event. And again, long-term partnerships. So minimum 3 years is what we now look at with any sponsors platform.
Which leads me to a really, thank you, Ronak. It leads me to a really interesting thought. There are some of us who believe, and maybe for right or wrong reasons, I'm not casting judgment here, who believe in the experiential world that we need to create IPs that we own, okay, and acquire sponsorship. There are some of us who believe that we wish to use our strategic, abilities and our organizational and creative abilities to create IPs for brands which are owned by the brand. So there's a mix of both that are happening, and there's no good or bad here. It's subjective, depending on the people, depending on the brand in question, and the likes. So I just want to know from y'all. Eventually, it's a partnership, as you have very firmly said, between the brand and the brand propagators and the brand marketers and the organizations that are actually creating and taking that thought process or that intellectual property to fruition or to fulfillment every year. Now, what does it take? What do you believe does it take for an agency that's working with you, a fulfillment agency slash creative agency? What does it take for this partnership to really fructify to the best it can? I know it's a bit of a generic question, but you can use it subjectively, focused on your brands or your objectives.
Ryan, I'll take this question first if Aditi is
Yeah.
okay with that.
Please, yes.
Sure.
All right. I think, Brian, what agencies and organizers need to understand and look at is gone are the days when, by giving a set matrix, right? So typically when you come across a sponsorship proposal, you will see, you will have a couple of tiers: silver, bronze, whatever, gold, platinum, right? With predefined deliverables. Of course, the higher you provide the more visibility that you get. I think today what is happening, Brian, is brands or companies are demanding, like I said, much more than beyond just showcasing the brand and showcasing themselves at the venue or on ground. And that I think needs to change if they need to be able to deliver and get right sponsors on board. So getting right sponsors is also important for a platform or from a creative perspective, right? Because if if today somebody comes to us and says, hey, look, we've got this platform and why did you come on board as sponsor? The first thing that we look at is there value in that for us?
Right.
Right. Because it's no more now saying that, okay, I want to plaster my brand across your emailers, across your digital assets, across on ground, etc. Right. It's about value. Can I get my clients into the platform? Can I build engagement with my clients? Can I acquire new clients meaningfully? Can I use this to my advantage from a long-term perspective? right? So it's moved beyond just getting those basic structured approach and say we'll give you this, you pay us this, etc. It doesn't work anymore, at least not for us. Uh, and I think that's something that I think these people would need to look at. Brands also today are looking at much beyond just uh, you know getting a booth space or looking at demographic data. Even today, data of the people attending has become so much more deeper, right? So it's just not about collecting a card there, but it's about engaging with your set of audience, perspective or otherwise, and meaningful engagement. I think that that's very important for any organizers or creative agencies to look at.
I tend to agree with Ronak, Brian. And just one point I'd like to add, which is, very important for brands, is we need to ensure that the brand values align, right? So as an agency, they need to understand what I as a brand stand for, what I believe in, and what I want to kind of, get out there in terms of my values. So I think any sponsorship proposal at the basis needs to be aligned to that. And I think agencies also, and this is a two-way stream. I'm not saying, someone who recommends it to us. And I think a lot of responsibility lies on us as marketers also need to be very clearly focused on the business objectives we're trying to achieve. So like, Ronak said, it's not only about putting a stall out there, but if I have clearly defined business objectives, that's going to help my agency or my partner to give better recommendations to me. So these
Absolutely.
two is just something I'd like to add on to what Ronak said.
No, I think we're working in the right direction, at least from a getting clarity point of view. Of course, when you talk about objectives and objectivity, and I completely resonate with what both of you have said. But is there, and I'm not necessarily speaking about the brands that you guys represent. I'm talking about the world out there. There is this whole cost per contact and all of this that does the rounds. And in the world of engagement and experiential, there still isn't a matrix that measures it, never mind effectively. I mean, even in other measurement matrices, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, while there are some in place, the results are hotly debated for various reasons, and that's not our topic of discussion today. But in the world of experiences and experiential and engagement, we don't even have a primary measurement model in place. And that's for obvious reasons, because one is the various kinds of products and activities that are out there. And two is the fact that a lot of it is subjective. A lot of the results are subjective or perception based, and that can work for or against. I just want some quick thoughts on that. How do you gauge the effectiveness of what you do? And I completely understand if you said we have clear objectives, and if the objectives are met, great. But how do you actually measure, have those objectives been met? I just want a little bit of clarity on that to the best we can.
Let me take on ground, for example, Brian, right? And I'm not only taking sponsorships and partnerships and IPs and all. I'm even talking about our day-to-day webinars. I mean, sorry, on ground events. Like Ronak mentioned, they're very important to our world as well. And you can see instant benefits because you get your business guys to meet the customers. RMs who perhaps wouldn't have had that one-on-one contact, on ground events allow them to do that. You do kind of, we do set parameters from a business angle as well around those, which, I really don't want to touch upon right now. But at the end of the year, we map against that. So we'll have to work very closely with business, saying we set down A, B, C, D, E from a business perspective. Have you achieved it via these events? Because we obviously have stock of the number of people we've engaged with, right? So it's kind of a matrix that we have to develop. And of course, you have your marketing objectives as well, which is, how many people can recall your brand? How did they feel when they came to the event and stuff like that? Here's where I think digital plays a big role. And we've kind of seen that a lot in the webinars. It actually helps you drill down to the level of engagement from time spent. which is what you could call, on a webinar, how much is the average time a customer has spent on it? What was the engagement in terms of the Q&A? If you take that on social media, there are even deeper engagement parameters that you can define. So I think digital plays a really, really important role in defining engagement parameters because it has the ability to give us these statistics. And that's my view in a nutshell.
Ronak, any
No, I
thoughts
agree
on?
with you. Yeah, so I agree with Aditi. Just to add a couple of things on that. So for on-ground events, and again, addressing it how the Aditi's put it between on-ground as well as digital or virtual. On on-ground events, Brian, for us, what the way to measure us, and like I said, we've started to enter into more meaningful partnerships as opposed to just randomly plastering our logos across. And when we are sitting for a sponsorship or any ground event that we are looking at, whether it's even our own IPs, what we look at is the engagement level or the engagement quotient that we've been able to achieve with our clients, and that's quite critical for us because at the end of the day, on a sponsored event, it's very difficult to gauge how many people have viewed your brand, right? There could be
Right.
100,000 footfalls, but I don't know if 100,000 footfalls did look at my logo
Yeah.
or not, right? Uh, and thus, it's very difficult to drive ROI. And it's quantifiable to say, hey, look, we sent out an invite for this event to 1,000 clients, and 700 came up, right? And for to that extent, Brian, what we've also done is we've internally built event tech. We've got an app which is specifically for experiences and engagement, where whenever a client agrees to RSVP, he gets a QR code, and at the event, we scan that QR code. So I get real-time data onto which client has come, who's gate crashing, for example, etc. And and then thus we are able to measure and quantify our engagement on ground. Moving to webinars and virtual events, I think the similar approach applies, because these webinars are one extremely controlled. It's not that we publish it. We've got great speakers coming in. We've got Prem Vatsa, we've got Morgan Housel who've come and spoken on our webinars. And the invitation is primarily to our clients and the universe that we're talking to. We are able to measure every person coming in because they are checking in, they're giving in their user ID passwords. We have the duration which we get from the platform that we are hosting it on, right? So there's enough data available to figure out and understand the engagement and the reach. And like Aditi said, there are which are those were of course the organization goals, and then we have our marketing goals where we're looking at branding, we're looking at engagement, we're looking at how can we better showcase the entire platform. It's the ease of experience right from RSVP to login to attending the webinar and feedback later, right? So that entire life cycle also kind of assists us in engaging the engagement level and the experience the client is going through.
I
Right.
think what Ranak, engagement is a really important point because, like I mentioned earlier, I think any sponsorship or partnership, and I'm not talking, long-term ones, primarily have pillars of engagement, and be it customer or business engagement, be it employee engagement, right? A lot of us
Absolutely.
even use sponsorships
Sure.
and partnerships for employee motivation and participation, and a lot also community engagement, right? How can you use this for grassroots level sports and education and things like that? So I definitely think engagement is a big one.
So, what you all have just said has kind of half answered my next question, but I want to run it by you guys in any case. So, there probably would be an agency or three whom y'all are familiar with, or y'all have a working relationship with, and that's a great thing. Unfortunately, in our business, we don't enjoy the privilege of agency on record. It's the AOR is pretty much the relationship you enjoy with with the brand and with the client. But I want to go one step further. Imagine a situation obviously in our business of, agencies, I'm talking about experiential agencies, there are many, sometimes I believe way too many, blurs the lines. But I'm sure even if you are working with a couple of them or three of them, there are a few out there who could provide some fantastic opportunities by way of intellectual properties and things like that. Now, I think it's a common challenge in the industry. Let's say I want to, work with one of your companies. How do I get how do I get access to what you want to achieve? How do I get access to the brand, to brand objectives, to where you want to take your brand through marketing efforts, through advertising efforts? Is there a recommended way? And in addition to that question, how do I come to you with a meaningful integrated solution? Obviously, once we chat, we will evolve, the product, to take it to higher levels of fruition. But how do I assimilate what the brand needs are, and then come to you with at least a starter?
I think, Brian, it's very simple. One, for IFL Wealth, we've removed the empanelment process. So any vendor who wants to come us and is bringing value, uh, we will just review them, do background checks, take referrals from the industry, and get them on board. I think primarily, if any agency wants to kind of work with IFL Wealth, I think what you need to do is the following. One, understand our universe. We are not a generic financial services company, right? Because given my audience, and thus that needs immense amount of classiness, luxury, things which are right up there. And I think that stands true for any brand for that matter. I don't know of any brand which will say, hey, look, we are fine with mediocre stuff, right? So I think understand our universe first, know who we are, who our clients are, what our ecosystem is. To research us out first, right? Because a lot of our data is there out there, right? Whether it's on social media, whether it's on our agencies, Facebook platforms where they put up our engagements that we've done, right? So research us out, understand us. Three, understand our pain points. It's not very difficult if you apply a little mind to understand, hey, look, okay, IFL Wealth is doing all of this, but these are the three areas that they're not doing anything about. And I mean, I will not be able to defend that if you know that, because it's out there in it's a public domain knowledge, right? But it'll require some effort from the agency. It'll require some research. It'll require some asking around possibly. And once you've this, come back to us. It's saying, hey, look, we know you do this. This is your universe. We found these are the gaps. Would you like us to engage? We can deliver this to you. I think if you've come with that kind of an approach, it's very difficult for any one of us, for me or Aditi or anybody in that matter, and I'm talking for the marketing fraternity as a whole, to I think at least not give you an audience, right? The audience is guaranteed. Then of course it's a matter of we want to do that now, whether it was a conscious decision to not do those elements, which are the gaps that they found, etc. Then, but it's a debate. But you will definitely get an in-person audience, is my opinion. Aditi, you want to add?
I wholeheartedly agree. In fact, when Brian was asking that question, the same thing was coming to my mind saying, I don't think there would be a single instance where someone has done their research and come up to us and said, even this is what you've done in the past and this is what you're doing now.
Sure.
It would definitely be an impressive first step for me. And it also allows us to have more meaningful conversations, right?
Yeah.
Because when we finally engage, it's about how do you take the next step, maybe making minor corrections, but how do you take the next step? So you're not going back to training someone in terms of, this is my brand, this is what I do, this is what I stand for. And in terms of getting an audience, like you asked, Brian, I think there are two folds, right? There's one where agencies can directly approach us as well, which they do. I think the other way, which when I was in advertising, I'd seen a bit of sprouts on, is approaching the mother agency. So if I'm working with the key agencies, can the smaller agencies approach the mother agency and present an integrated plan that could be presented to clients? So I think there are two ways this could be done. But definitely key of anything is know the brand you're presenting about. At least have some information.
Right. Uh, Tell me, do you believe, and feel free to be brutally honest, okay? I've lived my life in the experiential industry, but I've had the privilege of working closely with the advertising industry, both from an, an agency's perspective as well as from an, from a organizational perspective like the Ad Club or the 3 A's of I and the likes. And, a bit of storytelling, but a couple of decades back, experiential, if at all, approached brands through the advertising agency. And then there was a shift where brands started to approach, or agencies started to approach brands directly. And then there were relationships directly between brand and experiential agency. I'm undergoing, and happily so, undergoing over the last decade or so, relationships that are primary now. They are partnerships. So, Ronak, and don't read me wrong when you say you welcome vendors to the table. Now, that has a connotation, and maybe you didn't mean it that way.
Sure.
But does a marketer believe, and one has seen that happen as well, let three agencies come present to me, and then I will use the one I feel right, and I will, club one against the other, use it to my advantage, whatever. I mean, that's the extremity, okay? So don't read that as normal. Do you believe, and I'm asking a generic question, not about your organizations or you in particular, from an industry perspective, if I can call these
Mm.
industries, do you believe that we've evolved from vendor client to a certain level of strategic partnerships or creative partnerships? Do you believe that there is a growth process that you are experiencing or the industries are experiencing?
Absolutely, Brian. I think when I started doing events 9 years back, it was primarily a vendor-client relationship. Over the last 9 years, I've seen this evolve into a partnership model. And when I said vendor, any vendor can reach out to us, Brian. The idea was, or the thought process was that when they approach to us, it's not a partnership model at that stage, right? They are approaching us as an independent organization trying to woo us of our business. We don't know whether they've done their research. We don't know whether they have something to add further. To give you a perspective, Brian, the agencies that I've worked with have been with me for over 8 years now,
Oh, that's
and not one but four, and all four have been working with me for over 8 years. And newer agencies have come in to add further value, and we've got these agencies to work together. So my production agency or my event agency, which is doing production on ground, and my creative agency, which is doling out my logos and the design ideas and design thinking, we club them together. We have joint meetings in our offices together as a group, as a team, with my team, right? So once you are on board, we treat those vendors as partners, and the partners themselves, even today, Brian, come to us with ideas saying, "Sir, Ronak, whatever, hey, this is a great idea. I think this is a perfect fit for your organization. We know you guys will love it." And rightly so, we love it.
That's great.
I mean, engagements basis suggestions which has come from our partners and not from within the organization, right? So, but that happens, Brian, when you know us, when you are comfortable with us, when you
I
and
agree.
our partners today not only know me, they know everybody in my system. Including my employees, including my management, including my CEO, and everybody acknowledges them. They acknowledge everyone. So it's like an extended arm of my team out there.
No, nice. Thank you. I mean, it's nice to hear that. And I also completely accept that, for us to say we want to be treated as partners is one thing. We must be worthy of being treated as partners. I completely accept that. But it's nice to hear your thoughts on the. Aditi, you want to throw some light on this?
I kind of echo that, Brian, and a lot of our partners and agencies we've been working for years with, right? They've grown as we have grown, and I think over the years, and they have equivalent passion for the brand as we do. And at the end of the day, that's all you really need. In terms of an integrated approach, like I said, we are seeing that a lot across, right? So event agency working with a media agency, working with a creative agency is something which is more or less a norm nowadays, because everyone realizes that's the easier way to go, and that's the one voice you can present for your brand as well. And like Ronak said, I do think our partners having slightly more industry knowledge, if I could say that, than us in terms of what competition is doing and
Yes.
what's out there, do come up with a lot of recommendations which we do latch on to. So I think that's a lot of expertise partners bring to us.
Okay, a quick addition to that. Okay, you know, I did mention, a couple of questions ago that how we believe, thought processes have changed, industry has changed from, we working through advertising to working on our own and now being an integral part of the thinking and the strategy. I'm going to ask if there is a positive reversal of that, but I say positive. Some agencies belong to larger groups, like you did time with WPP, for instance. I now, the agency that I'm associated with now belongs to, let's say, the Denso Aegis network and the likes, right? There are many. Do you believe that you would look for, or does it help to look for a single window? Do you believe, irrespective of who the champion of your relationship is, do you believe that a single window works better, or in cases works, in some cases doesn't? What are your thoughts on, let's say, three offerings coming to you, together? A digital offering, a conventional advertising offering, an experiential offering. So, so then there is greater understanding, there is greater purpose in the product being brought to the table, etc., etc.
So I think both have the pros and cons, Brian. I think the advantage of having experts work on, say, and I'm just taking digital experiential because those are the ones you quoted, is the fact that they're experts, right? So I am very comforted by the fact that when these experts come to the table with me, they're bringing me the best options. Would I have that comfort if it was a single point? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe I'd, drill down a little bit more, ask for proof points and things like that. Whereas the advantage of a single point is just the time and efficiency of it. Um, I do see a lot of work happening at the back end now. So the 3 points of views that do converge into one nowadays, right? But you do know a lot of work of three different experts, so to speak, has happened in the background. So I think it has its pros and its cons. Also, the other thing is, in some instances, we don't need a holistic offering like traditional digital on ground. We might just look for one stream that we need, you know,
Sure.
guidance on. And that's when, like I said, both have their pros and cons that bring something to the table at
Yeah,
least.
it wasn't a selfish question. I was just trying to figure out, because for
Yeah,
all, for all three to get a greater wholesome understanding of the brand, of its objectivity, of various things around it,
yeah.
it sometimes makes a lot more sense. So there's conjunction. You know,
Yeah, it's conjunction. I wasn't getting the word right.
it's exceedingly key. Key to, to results, to better results. I think, we've more or less gone through the pros and cons of, all the questions I had in my mind. There's just one thing, and it's a pretty simple question. Today, engagement can be music engagement, could be fashion and lifestyle engagement, could be sporting engagement, could be various other business engagements, health and lifestyle. I mean, are there any thoughts on this? And I'm not necessarily saying align it to your brand and objectivity only, maybe that as well, but your general thoughts on what's working, and what your thoughts are. Because, I mean, like I said, there's a plethora of offerings that could be brought to the table.
Ronak, do you mind if I go first again?
Oh,
Sorry
please, please,
about
please,
that.
please, please.
Sure.
You know, I was just thinking about that before I logged on, and I think three things in these times, especially, that have stood out for us that customers want is inspiration, knowledge, like I think Ranak also mentioned before, and entertainment. So if you look at a lot of our online sponsorships or, partnerships for programs and all of that, they targeted around these three parameters. For example, we've tied up with a platform for SMEs where we're showcasing startups that are doing really well, that have not only kind of grown over the past few years, but have also been tiding these unprecedented times. And that's an inspirational story.
Right.
Um, then for knowledge, we realize, while we might have a lot of in-house experts and thought leaders, we realize we might not be in a position to provide a holistic perspective to a certain theme. So we've tied up with partners for that. And entertainment, of course, if you kind of look at what we've been doing on social media, we've been getting a lot of entertainment kind of options out to clients. So for me, these three have particularly stood out in these times at least.
Okay. Ronak?
Completely aligned with Aditya, I think, and she's nailed this bang on. Inspiration, knowledge, entertainment are actually the three cornerstones of any engagement activity. Broadly speaking, which whether it's a sponsorship, whether it's IPs, whether it's general connect with the client, the audience out there. These are the three parameters which primarily would have every tiny little bits plugged into them. So, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I think we've unfortunately come to the end of this really interesting chat. It would have been wonderful, if we had the luxury of a little more time. But hey, I suppose we don't. I just want to say, that I've been a part of a fair few panel discussions, as you might imagine, and I think this has been engaging and informative, to say the least. You know, and I say this really honestly. Thank you so much, Aditi, Ronak, for opening your minds out, opening your hearts out, being absolutely candid, in what you say and how you say. I just want to thank you on behalf of Believe. I want to thank you on behalf of the industry that I represent. And I hope we can collectively overcome current challenges that we face and get on to happier times. I'm going to use the phrase I hate using yet again. I hope the new normal works for both of us. Yeah. Uh, there's another word I hate using, unprecedented, so I won't use that.
Oops, I
But
used that somewhere.
I do as well. So the three words: unprecedented, new normal, and webinar. Yeah, I mean, these are the three words that, we've stuffed down our throats and everyone else's throats over the last quarter or thereabouts. But thank you once again. It's been a fun discussion and, like I said, exceedingly informative and engaging. Thank you, Aditi. Thank you, Ronak.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Aditi and Ronak, for being with us today.